Hi, everyone. I'm Philip Rothman at the 2024 MOLA conference in Cleveland, Ohio, specifically the Tech Fair. And I have the great pleasure of catching up with my good friend, Chris Swaffer from Notion, PreSonus, Fender, all of the above. Chris, it's great to see you again at the Tech Fair, the second one that you have attended.
Yeah, well, great to see you too.
Yeah.
And last year we were in Berlin together,
Yes.
and orchestral librarians and Notion aren't necessarily sort of my fit or target audience for me. But when we
Right.
did the conference last year, there was just such a buzz about the place, and everyone was just downloading the app as I stood there.
Oh, that's great.
It was a really good experience
Uh-huh.
in the end. So although they might not be using Notion in their day-to-day as a librarian, they're musicians too,
Yes.
and outside of their normal day, they were happy to report they were using Notion. So it was a really good experience, and it's great to be here.
It's interesting that you saw those download statistics spike with the conference, and I think it speaks to Notion being really, probably the most ubiquitous of any of the products that are out there in terms. Well, you can probably recite them better than I can in terms of all the different platforms. But remind us about Notion Mobile, and there's still the Notion desktop application as well. But Notion on mobile is on so many devices now, and really anyone. And we see this in the library. And you may not know certain people have their own personal computers, Macs, Windows, tablets, Android, so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's right. And to some extent, Notion on desktop sort of flies under the radar. It's not your normal day-to-day or distribution channel. And well, who's using it? I don't ever see it until you go over to the mobile version and you see, well, it's in 6 different app stores. It's available on your Amazon Fire tablet or from the Galaxy Store. And suddenly we're in all these big shop windows or virtual shop windows, reaching a whole new market of people that either you or I sort of historically see as being a traditional notation market. So it's been a really sort of interesting ride for Notion, but that's where it is.
That's great. Remind us, Notion 3.3 came out. Is that the 3.3.1? I think whatever is the latest point update to that. But what are some of the more recent? Since you and I spoke, you were on the podcast, and we were in Berlin. What are some of the things that we have seen roll out in Notion in recent months?
Well, of interest, especially for me, is finally getting around to doing some notation improvements. Rewriting Notion to work on these platforms was a big technical job. It shares now a software platform with Studio One, our sister DAW, and that was a lot of work. So actually to get around now back to things like tweaking notation and controlling layout control and the actual spacing of the notes, something that we've really wanted to do the last year, but sort of had other things to do. That's been in the last update. So we've been maximizing what you can fit on the page with Notion. And as we go forward, we're looking at sort of improving the back and forward with the Studio One score editor, which is also what we look after as a notation team as well.
Nice.
Just making sure we're sort of up to date with each.
How are things going with Fender? I know this is the tail end of your visit here to the States. You're heading back to the UK, but you've been in our country for a couple of weeks now.
Yeah, and they've really been very supportive of all of our software. Our little group of developers in Hamburg who make Studio One, who make Notion, but also make all the firmware that goes inside our hardware as well in our mixers. And Fender have been very supportive of that effort from the word go. And in terms of what it means for Notion, it meant we had to improve our tablature, and you might see a little Fender headstock on the Notion logo that's replaced the violin. Little subtle things to keep everyone happy.
Okay, maybe an electric violin, that could be next.
That's next.
Okay, all right. well, good. Well, in closing our little discussion here, anything specific about MOLA and the group of librarians that either informs your work or you've been able to impart to them?
Yeah, I mean, certainly visiting other sessions and discussing what they require from the technology, not just in notation software, but in music readers and in management software. And they have a very particular set of needs, but they're very vocal and adept in communicating those. So it's actually been really useful to hear someone talk very specifically about what I want from this what I want as a solution to a problem,
right,
and how can I use technology to do it. And that's been really interesting.
That's great. Well, it's something that we'll continue to explore in this tech fair, which still has a few more hours to go, and hopefully in future ones. We had a really great session this morning where David McDonald, my podcast co-host, and Joshua Ludi, one of the co-chairs of the committee, solicited a lot of questions from the delegates here, and hopefully that will also inform future discussions. But until then, we hope to see you at the next one, and hopefully before then. But Chris Swaffer, good to see you. Thanks for taking a little time today.
Thanks for that.
Great to see you.
Cheers.
Yep.